I bid you welcome.
I welcome you to my house.
Welcome to my house.
Welcome to my home.
Hello Horror Hounds, welcome to my horror house. The film I want to talk about this time is Edgar Wright's latest movie, Last Night in Soho, which I've been super keen to watch for two reasons. One, I'm a huge fan of Edgar Wright, have been ever since his TV days with Spaced, through the Cornetto trilogy with Simon Pegg and Nick Frost. Scott Pilgrim vs. the World is underrated and I think it's a superb film. And second, because from this director whose work I love, I was hearing noise that this was his first horror movie, that in fact it was even an homage to Giallo, or at least bended some way towards horror towards the end of the film in the final act. And I was really keen to see what a man of his undeniable talents would do in that sort of sandpit. And as it turns out, what he has done is he has produced the most beautifully wrapped Christmas present that when you open it, you discover it is an empty box. It is a gaudy bauble of a film that smashes upon the most cursory inspection. It pains me to say that it is a wonderfully smelling wet fart of a movie. If you've seen the trailer, the hook is undeniable. It follows Eloise, a young, inspiring fashion designer who moves to the bright lights and big city of London to join art college. And while she is there in the digs that she is staying at, whenever she falls asleep in her dreams, she enters the world of the past, 1960s London, and she learns slowly through these nighttime adventures that she is inhabiting the body of Sandy, a woman who really existed in that time. And she lives her life, and then from the hope of the glamour of fortune and fame that was the magnetic pull of 1960s London, Sandy's life descends into the seedy underbelly of that world, up to her murder, which Eloise witnesses and then tries to bring justice to the killer in the present day. Fantastic. The waking world where the killer is still alive and perhaps now threatening her life as she bears witness in this supernatural way through this sort of Twilight Zone type MacGuffin of stepping back through time in her dreams to inhabit the body and life of a woman who previously also went to London to sort of seek her fortune and fame and follow her art. It sounds fantastic. It looks gorgeous, and it is as deep as a puddle. Let's get one thing out of the way right from the start. This is not Edgar Wright's horror movie, and this is certainly not Edgar Wright's homage to Giallo. What I find particularly frustrating, and this is why I'm trying to talk about the movie as it is, not what I was expecting it to be or hoping it would be. That wouldn't be fair to the film. But what Edgar Wright does do is he references Michael Powell's Peeping Tom. He references the movies of Mario Bava. And if you're going to lean a little into that world, I expect you to deliver something of your own. Now, I want to be clear here. So bright primary coloured lighting and the occasional inclusion of a knife does not make this a Giallo movie, and it doesn't make this an homage to Giallo in exactly the same way that in Malignant, which I reviewed a little while ago, some bright red lighting and a black leather gloved killer brandishing a knife or a stabby weapon does not make an homage to Giallo. Giallo is much, much more than that. This is all just surface, and this is exactly what Last Night in Soho is. It's all surface. Remember the 1960s? Oh, here's a bit of that. Remember Mario Bava? Ooh, here we go. Remember that horror film that you liked? Ooh, doesn't it all look very pretty? But ultimately, The hook that we all saw from the trailer is it. There is no more than that. There is a cursory attempt to sort of suggest that that the glitz and the glamour of 60s London was itself a veneer and this seedy underbelly that I talked about. But that's very difficult to mine when your film presents a theme park ride version of the swinging 60s. Last Night in Soho is to 60s London what Disney's It's a Small World After All is to intercontinental world culture. It is a theme park ride. It is as if the 1960s was the Pirates of the Caribbean ride, and it occasionally nods to themes and issues. Oh, vulnerable young women being exploited. They're like it's a London double-decker tour bus. Passing on your left, you see mild subtext of women being exploited in the entertainment industry. Passing on your right there, vague references to how classist now the arts have become. In the modern day, Eloise, our character, comes from the sticks. She's not very with it. She's not cool. She's not on trend. And all the other people there at art school, more or less, are very posh and very moneyed. And this could have mined how the arts nowadays is a privilege for the well-to-do and the wealthy, because you have to be able to afford to go to these art schools now, especially film and TV now is a plethora in Britain of rich white posh boys, when back in the 60s you did have your working class heroes. You had your Michael Caines, you had your Terence Stamps and the like, and you've even got Terence Stamp in this movie, and you do absolutely nothing with him. What you've seen him do in the trailer, that's it. That's what he does. You get Diana Rigg in the movie, and it just makes you remember all the wonderful performances that Diana Rigg was able to give, the parts she was given, and the wonderful parts Terence Stamp was given. But there's no discourse between the sort of classist art establishment now as opposed to back then, the wave of working class, and it was the working class and the Beatles and the like who really drove the culture of the swinging 60s. There's no discourse there. It's just a sort of nod and a wave as it passes by. And let's move on to the other flash-looking camera move and all this swirly kind of stuff. And ooh, doesn't everything look really pretty in the way that Edgar Wright absolutely excels at? But when there's nothing underneath it, it's just vapid, boring and frustrating. It is not the fault of any of the actors. Our lead, Thomasin McKenzie, playing Eloise, is really engaging. She's fantastic. She's certainly one to watch. She will get better parts in the future, I have no doubt. Anya Taylor-Joy, who plays Sandy, her sort of counterpart in the 60s, is absolutely superb as well, as you would come to expect from her in the career she's having. Let me give you an example, which is the problems of the film in absolute microcosm. There is a wonderful dance scene where the two female leads are dancing with Matt Smith, who is the wrong 'un in the past, the pimp. And it is it's all done in one shot, and it's choreographed so wonderfully that Thomasin McKenzie and Anya Taylor-Joy can swap out outside the frame, with Matt Smith staying inside the frame, so that while it looks like he's dancing with one person, the person he's dancing with keeps changing. It's Sandy, it's Eloise, it's Sandy, it's Eloise. The choreography for that is insane. Choreographing it then with the constantly moving camera must have taken so long to rehearse. Superb, job done, tells you everything you need to know, gets it done. Except it's completely spoiled by a couple of digital examples of them switching out the actresses that happen in front of your eyes. It's clearly digital. one woman goes under his arm, and out the other side comes a different woman. It all looks very flash and nice, but it takes away from the true artistry of the genius choreography, the camera work, and that entire setup that they've created to show this off, all done in camera, spoiled by the inclusion of a couple of digital bits of trickery that are completely unnecessary. So what of this notion that the film leans into horror? Sort of. There are spiritual, sort of ghostly, there are ghouls in it, monsters, there is a murder, there is a knife attack, and there are stakes in the present day for our main protagonist as well, but because everything is so shallow, the stakes just seem to be, they're not real. I never once worried for anyone in the movie, and rather than left turning into horror, what it felt like to me was that it descended into a feature-length cinema episode of Doctor Who. I happen to freaking love Doctor Who, but this is not what they were going for, and too many times during the finale, the final act, it felt more like monsters and running, an episode of Doctor Who, and not just once, it just did it time
Where are you going?
and time
That was quick.
and time again. Eloise learns nothing from her trip into the past. There is just the passing nod towards trying to get the murder solved or the murderer brought to justice, which the trailer made it seem like that was going to be the point of the story, a sort of time-travelling murder mystery, or at least trying to solve a murder or bring a murderer to justice. None of that. Again, that's just nodded and waved at as it passes by. It's so frustrating. I mean, it looks really pretty, but it's an utterly meaningless story, and everyone involved, including Edgar Wright, deserved better. The material just isn't there, and I wonder, having thought about it and the movies of his that I've loved in the past, I think the problem is he kind of wanted you to take this one seriously, and he is not good at characterization, and he is not good at well-rounded characters. He's good at cartoon reality, heightened reality, cartoon characters. There's a character in this whose job it is to be the one decent man in all of London, TM, and that's it. That's his character trait. He's a decent bloke when all other men are scum, and it's not good enough. That's not a character. Eloise is the wide-eyed innocent in the bright lights and big city of dangerous London, and that's it. That's all she is. And I think back to all of the films of his that I love, and all of the characters are cartoon characters. Shaun of the Dead, Hot Fuzz, Scott Pilgrim versus the World. He's good at that sort of knockabout cartoon reality. I don't ever buy when in this film he tries to show that there are scares or danger or any kind of stakes at all. I don't buy it at all. It's on exactly the same level as Doctor Who, where you know, even though it seems like the Doctor is in for certain death at the end of this episode, next week in the first minute he or she will break out and be absolutely fine, and then we'll just watch the next episode. That's the contract we have with Doctor Who, and that is fine. It is not the contract you have with a film like Last Night in Soho. It's such a shame. And I know that there are people out there who love it, and if you think I'm absolutely wrong about this, please by all means tell me why you think I'm wrong. If you love it, I don't think you're wrong to love it. You win. You get an extra movie that you love. You get one more movie more than me to love. So you're ahead in the game. So I'm envious of you for loving it. I just couldn't engage with it on any level other than, ooh, isn't that pretty? And unfortunately, this time the ooh, isn't that pretty factor undermined everything else that the movie was trying to do by being too pretty. A wonderfully smelling wet fart of a movie.